Hey, it's Jamie, and welcome to a selects edition of Eventual Millionaire. This is where we go back and find the best of the best, the ones that you loved from the past 6-7 years. We've been doing this a long time, and there's some amazing interviews with amazing guests that you have not seen yet. So we are bringing them back. It is the selects edition. Let us know what you think, and I hope you enjoy.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to the Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jamie Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I am Jamie Masters, and I am so excited to have Sigrun on the show today. You can find her at sigrun.com. She's been the CEO of multiple companies beforehand, before she even started her business. Plus, she has multiple MBAs, and she grew her business from zero to over $1 million in less than 4 years. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, one of the things I absolutely loved is that you are on a mission to accelerate gender equality through female entrepreneurship. It is so hard to find females for this show. You have no idea. Well, maybe you do. You're a podcaster also, right? Why is that such a hardcore mission for you?
Well, actually, it is easier to help men. And if I wanted to have life easy and my business easy, I would be coaching only men. But that's not what I was put on this earth to do. I realized that quite early that I am called to help women. For some reason, we have less confidence. We've been brought up to be nice and behave and not take risks. And this is haunting us for the rest of our lives. So only 1.7% actually make more than $1 million a year, female entrepreneurs. So I'm on a mission, like yourself, hopefully, to change that.
That's amazing. So what I would love to hear is your story then. How did you go, especially because you were successful before, but then had a hiccup when you moved? Tell me a little bit about your story.
Well, I moved to Germany, 20 years old, to study architecture, thinking that art and science was my dream, combination of both. And it's a fantastic study, but I realized towards the end of my studies that it was not the job that I wanted. I was in a small architecture firm. They paid me salary late. I realized that if I really wanted to be this successful architect that I admired from the books, I had to live somewhere outside Iceland. And I also saw only men be really famous and successful. And and then there was the internet that came along. So this is many moons ago. I'm a little bit older. And I just was more fascinated. It sounded more exciting. It sounded more accessible. And what I've realized much later, women have a big chance building businesses on the internet, even more easier than in other industries. So I moved over to the internet. I finished my architecture studies. So actually, I'm a licensed architect. And I started to study computer science on the side and starting to work in a software company in Iceland. And only 2 years later, I find myself in a small software company after actually losing my job in the dot-com boom when everyone had to let people go. You know, everyone were over-investing. People were burning money like crazy. And I was one of those people let go.
So you lived through that, like the whole craziness. What year was that-ish? 2000 something?
2000.
Yeah,
2000.
wow.
Yeah. And that's when I lost my job for the first time. And it was a shock. But I took a very fortunate decision. Right around that time, there was a course offered for women only to learn about how to write a business plan. So I had no business education or degree or experience, but I did this course. I learned how to do a business plan. I brought the business plan to a small software company and made them hire me based on the business plan. I was too scared to start a business. This is back in 2002. I was just like, oh, I have no money to start a business. I need the safety net. And you know that most people actually start a business in their 40s. And I think that's smart because then you have collective
make all the mistakes early, right?
Yeah.
Someone else's company.
Make them in somebody else's company. Yeah. So it was a smart decision when I look back, but I also didn't have a business idea. And I started to work in this small software company. And a year later, I come to work and I hear that the company has been sold. And not immediately that day, but a few days later, I got the crazy idea that I could become a CEO. And still, no business degree and no business education. But, common sense to business. I would say my parents had a dry cleaning since I was 10 years old. So I saw a few things. I saw how they run a business. But yeah, still, I wouldn't say necessarily I had this business acumen or knew that I would be a business person. But I felt very comfortable in this small software company. I felt like one of the nicest places have ever worked for someone else. And I just said, I want to stay here, but I don't want a new boss. And yeah, I did what it took and got the job. And that changed my life completely. I realized that I found my zone of genius. It wasn't architecture, it wasn't computer science, it was building businesses. And my first job was a turnaround. So actually, if it hits a fan and economy goes down, actually that's not bad for me because I consider myself as a turnaround expert.
You're like, been there, done that. I'm good at that.
Yes,
Survivor.
I know I'm good at it. Yeah. You look under every stone and you find stuff, especially when you go into other people's businesses. You just look and you will find how to turn the business around. And yes, you will have to let people go. But, you have to cut so deep that it bleeds, is my advice for anyone who needs to go to a turnaround ever.
I love it. It's hardcore. Your name means Valkyrie. I looked it up because I thought it was such an amazing name. So now I get it. Right?
Yeah.
Cut so deep it bleeds.
Which is difficult. Whiting knife.
Which is difficult though, especially if it's I think the attachment of being the CEO and the business owner is tough sometimes because it's not like I'm just doing what I have to do. It's like, it's my baby. I can't cut deep, right? Like, how do we deal with that when the CEO and the business owner are one and the same?
Well, yeah, obviously it was easier to come in, but I had been working for the company for a whole year. So I felt like it was mine. And it was hard to let people go that were kind of my friends. And suddenly I was boss of people who were my colleagues before. But yeah, it is hard. Just this morning, I had to let someone go.
Sucks. Let's talk about that for a second because I work with a lot of business owners and we talk about this and I'll even have them call me right before because it is one of the worst things, even if the employee sucked horribly bad, right? It still sucks so bad. So what advice do you have for people in that situation right now?
See it as an opportunity for both of you to grow. I also didn't sleep so well last night. I don't do it that easily. And I have probably fired 30 or 40 people. Yeah. In the last 15 years. So I wouldn't say I do this every day, but I probably have done it more often than most people that I know. And still, the night before when I know I'm firing someone that has been on the team and I feel they're doing an okay job, but they're obviously not in the right role. I didn't sleep that well. But when I've done it, I'm so relieved.
After.
And I feel the relief of the other person as well. And I use it as a coaching opportunity. I really take the time. I don't go right in and say, you're fired. I don't even use that word. Yeah. I talk about, how do you feel in your role? Do you think things are going well? And I use it as an opportunity. If they say, oh, I think everything is good, I'm like, well, that's not really how I see it. So here's my perspective on it. And here's what I, see happening. And we agreed, that, if it's not a fit, round peg into square hole, that's just not a fit. And we agreed after 45 minutes talk that it was best that this employee would leave. And so, you can do it in a nice way. And typically I stay actually connected to most of the people that I fired. They're my Facebook friends still today.
Ditto. Well, for some of them, for sure. And it's so funny. So to me, when a business owner looks at what they have to do, they always look at the sort of the worst, like, I was holding them up. I was supporting everything. Well, they're humans and they can take care of themselves also, right? So we put so much on them. Now, don't get me wrong, very, very important to care about our employees, but the fact that you have a heart and that you don't want to do it either, but that they're going to be better off either way. I want whoever I'm working with to focus on that part, that your employee that you're firing will probably be happier in some other role later that is actually a better fit. And you're doing them a disservice by not putting them in the right role and actually enjoying their lives too, because they probably can feel that it's that awkwardness of being in an unfitting role. Like you were saying, after 45 minutes, you're like, okay, that's great. So
I made it even more exciting to find a new job for her.
See, this is perfect. And that's what I want everyone to think of. Like, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. It still sucks, don't get me wrong, but still, it makes everybody happy in the long run, especially the business owner. So tell me a little bit about your story and how you went, okay, now I'm going to be the CEO of my own company. Because 4 years to a million is what everybody listening to the show is like, please tell me how you did that. So can you walk us through what that was like?
So I think we have to go back to that time where I was a CEO of a software company. And after a turnaround, I grew it 40% every year. We had 20% EBITDA. It was going really well. Owners were happy. I didn't own a share or anything, but they paid for my MBA later when I asked for it. There, I realized I hadn't kind of started to think, what if it was really my business? Like, would I really run a business like this? And the downside was that every time I wanted to make more revenue for the business, I had to hire more programmers. And at some point, there was 1% unemployment rate in Iceland. What happens in 1% unemployment rate? The banks steal the programmers for you. A small software company doesn't have a chance to pay the salaries. And just at that peak, I called up my boss, the owner of the business. I said, you sell now. This is the peak. I'm not going to make any more value. And I had doubled the value of the business in 3 years. So everybody was happy. But I was like, I don't want to run a business like that. Now, maybe I just planted the seed in my own head because I wasn't even thinking of starting a business. But when the time came, I was like, it has to be scalable. It has to be scalable without adding, like, yes, of course, we have to build our team and grow our team as we scale our business, but not that I need one extra person to make another 100,000 or whatever it is. Like, it cannot be that type of scalability. It needs to be exponential. And that was really important to me. So I guess I had that in mind when I started. And I started out of necessity. I had lost my job twice in 2 years. I was then in Switzerland. I had met the love of my life at Tony Robbins in London in 2008. There was an empty seat. I sat down and I was sitting next to a man and his mother. And later he became my husband. My whole love story is on my website if you want to read about it. So basically, I got sick from one of the jobs I had. I was working in a medical technology company, and there were no meetings. I didn't have to run around like the CEO. I was running around and driving to meetings. And, even in one of the jobs that I had, we had 3-story building. My CEO office was on the top. I hated that, actually. I wanted to sit down with the salespeople. But I never felt that my body was in any pain from my job, but suddenly I felt it there in 2009, 10. I felt it, these things, you kind of, your shoulder get cramp, and I got pinching ear pain, and, you start to feel your mouse, the hand, because of using the mouse. I was feeling all these pains because I wasn't moving much, but also the job didn't require me to stand up and even talk to anyone. And so I was sick for 7 months. I developed something called repetitive strain injury, which I still have a sign off today, but I can work 100% today. And I deal with it in ways that I just, I do exercise and things like that. But I realized I couldn't go back to work for someone because this repetitive strain injury required me to go regularly to physio, go out for a daily walk in the middle of the day. And I was like, I started to imagine the horror of sitting in an office. In Switzerland, they tend to work long hours. And I was like, wow, I would work like 9 hours a day, not be able to go for a walk. This would just go worse. Like, it could even end up that I could never work again. Repetitive strain injury can go that bad that you are, really disabled. So I imagined these horror stories, and that the only way for me is to now start my business. And I just didn't know what it was.
Isn't that sad, though, that we need a catalyst that crazy in order to actually go, let's do it? Because I get you. I had a kid. I was told to quit my job. I don't know how many times. I was like, but you don't understand. I have health insurance, right? And then I had a kid and was like, oh, I can't travel. Now something outside myself made me do it, which is sad that I couldn't do it on my own, just in my own opinion, going back. But it's interesting that you need something outside of yourself, quote unquote, to really give you that push.
Yeah. I think we sometimes need pain, whether it's, about losing weight or having a healthier lifestyle or finally starting that dream business, sometimes it needs to be some painful thing that happens to us or for us, let's say,
See,
for
I
us.
love that too. I just feel like, man, if I just got way better at paying attention to signs before it gets, I'm very pain tolerant. So it gets like this before I decide, right? And so I'm trying to lessen the pain tolerance that I have. So that way I actually make the choices that I know in my heart I want to make beforehand, right? Because there's those things
Yeah.
that we do need that outside pain because it does make a bigger difference in the long run. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So it took me forever to get started. I was overthinking the business idea, and I lost 12 to 18 months worrying about what my business idea is.
Thank you
And
for saying that. Everybody wants to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was not like, oh, I just knew it all. I was avoiding the business coach label like the pest. I didn't want it. I was like, no, I'm going to write books. I'm going to be a photographer, like anything. Like I was taking all my hobbies that I've always loved to write. I'm a serious hobby photographer. Put it on a little break the recent years, but yeah, I can take pretty good pictures and get paid for it. And I was looking at all the things I could do, and it was like the elephant in the room. you know, you're a business coach. You've been a CEO for 10 years. I had been hired to write business plans for startups. It was all there, and I was just avoiding it. I'm like, no, 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 no. And something happened. There was somebody told me about accountability course that somebody was doing, and I just signed up, and I didn't even take really part in the course, but my eyes kind of like, oh, yes, I got it. I can help people take action. I'm an action taker. Even though I've been in a limbo for 18 months, I know how to take action. I've always taken action. So I started to test little things out with just entrepreneurial friends. We call it beta testing today. And I even did like these challenges and stuff, but all under the radar, not publicly. The first time I dared to do something publicly, this is in March 2014, I realized that my own struggle was, a business idea in a disguise. And my first online course I created was how to find your true passion and the right business idea in 30 days. And I posted it in a few groups, decided to run it like a challenge for 7 days. 134 people signed up. Wow. I would say about 30 or 40 were active in the group. I got amazing testimonials. I a little bit overwhelmed them because I expected them to figure this all out in 7 days. So now actually the course is 30 days and not 7 days. I don't really sell it today. It's a bonus to my big program. But it was the start.
The 134 people, was it paid or not paid the first time?
No, it was a free. It was a free.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. But I was such a beginner in online business that I didn't have an upsell afterwards. I delivered this amazing value, and then I was like, oh, I didn't think this through. Like I was so focused on creating the content as, I was just preparing the content always for the next day. And I didn't have anything like planned afterwards. And it feels like such a failure looking back. But, I have a story to tell on a podcast. So that's
exactly.
Cool.
Learning. There we go.
Learning. And then I was and then I started to do something smart in the middle of the year. I was selling single sessions. I got a little consulting contract on the side. So I was earning a few thousand, but not much. I started to do weekly webinars in July 2014. And I did weekly webinars for until I had achieved 100. And this massively built my list. I learned to do Facebook ads. I was adding 100, 200 people to my list every time I did a webinar. So by September, just after a few weeks, I had about 1,500 people on my list. And I started to ask myself, why am I not earning more money? I was really kind of around, even like, I think in August, I had like $800 revenue. I was like, what's going on here? And of course, I wasn't asking for the sale.
Okay, there we go.
I wasn't launching anything. Like, okay. I wasn't doing the things I should be doing. And I was still like, what's going on with me? So here I was with my decade of CEO experience, MBA from a top-rated business school, and I was struggling to figure out how to sell something. And this is what happens, I think, when you move from corporate to your own business. It's because your own name on the, on the line. It's very hard to shift. And I see this with most women, finding it very hard to start. After you've cracked the code, it becomes like drinking water. But I was also fighting this idea that I should be able to solve this on my own with my business experience and education. Why do I need somebody's help? And well, I needed somebody help, obviously. I hired a coach for 6 weeks, and just paying upfront the $5,000 I paid, and that felt like so much money back then. I got an email the same day for someone asking me for coaching. And I'm like, seriously? And so I really believe that when you invest in yourself, that you have a return. There's this exchange of energy, and you might not even need the coaching itself. Of course, that's good too. But it was like, that's not the problem here. I just needed to actually show the world that I'm serious about my business and be willing to invest in myself. So that resulted in me making $55,000 in 3 months after making almost nothing. Well, I made about 20,000 the 9 months before. And so this was a complete shift. I managed to, like, from my first sale in March 2014 until March next year, I made 6 figures. So it was just around, within 12 months from the first sale to 100K. And that felt like a very amazing milestone. Now making 100,000, I expect that in a day or
Isn't
let's
that
say
funny?
in a week.
You change exactly. You change your. But I think that's what's so amazing. I want to dive deeper into that. Though, what was the catalyst? What do you think changed in you? Let alone putting the money down, because I know putting that money down and the skin in the game makes a difference. You just level yourself up. But what were you actually doing? Did you just ask for the sale more? Were you doing more webinars? Tell me what the tactics were that the coach actually ended up having you do that made, because 0 to 6. Well, less, about 0 to 6 figures in a year is what a lot of people just listening would like to do anyway. So what was that big catalyst?
I was doing these webinars, but I wasn't making an offer. I was just, teaching. And looking back now, I'm like, I was over delivering. So people felt like full after every webinar. So there was no reason even to reach out to me and ask for coaching. The guy that asked me for the coaching, that was the first email I got, hadn't watched any of my webinars. The webinar people were like, hey, this is great. Sigrun is giving me all this information for free. I don't need anything else. So it was also the shift of like, okay, I need to tease them into something that's coming versus giving them everything that I think they need to know about a certain topic. I was very much in the teaching phase instead of giving them the overview and making them realize that there's much more to learn. And I think that's a big mistake most people are making with webinars. They're just teaching too much.
Well, and that's the thing, because they want to over-deliver, because you're like, oh, well, we want to engage them. We want to over-deliver. But sometimes you're doing them a disservice also. So where is that line, though? Because it does make a difference.
Yeah, it is about, not using the 60 minutes to teach. It's about splitting it up into, what's my background story? Why am the person to teach you this? Here are my 4 principles or 3 mistakes, or kind of giving them the overview, but realizing that there's more to learn. When you teach everything you know about a topic in 60 minutes, you overwhelm your audience. They think they're maybe even unqualified to do this because you have kind of overwhelmed them, or they feel like, that's great. Now I know everything. They don't realize in that moment that there is more to learn because you didn't tell them.
Yeah, you're making the gap. Be like, oh, wait, but you're not going to do this on your own, or you need more of this information. And that way the sale is a lot easier. So you got really refined at doing webinars then.
Yes, I got very good at webinars, and I finally learned to do a webinar that actually sells. The only issue was that I was really wanting to create another online course. And I wanted to create a course on all the launch tech because my webinars had been around that. I realized later that's not what I want to be known for because I'm a business strategist. But, you make those mistakes in your first year of business. You become known for the wrong thing or some other thing that you don't really want to be known for.
Well, actually,
but anyway,
I was No, I think that's really, really important because like the fact that you picked something and it wasn't exactly aligned. Tell me a little bit about that. I feel like people do that all the time, but they're afraid to even go down that path enough. So even niching is tough, right? at the beginning, because they're like, well, I don't know. Or if they do niche, then they're afraid they can't back up and do something else. And you're known as a business strategist. So how did you do it? How did you go from tech and sort of switch it around when you knew that it wasn't the right thing?
Well, I think I had a wake-up call. I went to a conference in May 2015, and I'm walking to the reception, and there's a woman who comes, "Oh, you're Sigrun." So a lot of people start to know me because of my webinars. Like I go to a conference in, Dallas, Texas, and somebody knows me, from my webinars. And I thought, oh, that's cool. She knows me. But then she said, "Sigrun, we are the same. We do the same thing." And I'm like, oh no. That was my huge wake-up call. I think I had started to realize before that I might be on the wrong track, doing so much tech and how to versus, mindset and strategy, and going back to my CEO and teaching that. But yeah, meeting this woman and she telling me, well, we do the same thing and we're the same. And I'm like thinking, no, we're not, in my head. That was really helpful. So thank you to the woman. I don't know her name anymore.
I love it though, that interaction when you're like, oh, whoops, wrong track. Okay, over here, right? Huge to be able to have that insight. That's awesome. All right, I'm sorry. Continue on the story. I think this is awesome.
So I did this launch webinar. I hired this business coach for 6 weeks to help me with getting out of my own head, making the sales. And she was adamant about me doing one-on-one. She said, "Sigrun, you are in your first year of business. You should be selling one-on-one." And I'm like, no. I want to sell my online course, and I'm going to create a new online course. Of course, I didn't create it, but we created the sales page. I knew what I was going to teach. I was going to take the topics of my webinars. It was all laid out. One person bought.
I love these stories. Sorry, continue.
And I felt like a complete failure. I had invested the $5,000. One person bought from a webinar of 600 registrants. Like, how bad is that? And I refunded the person, and the business coach said, "Okay, should we do one-on-one now?" And I'm like, okay, let's do it. So she helped me write emails to get them on a discovery call. I sent out email and we opened up a few more spots. Basically, 90 people booked. And for the next 3 weeks, I was doing calls back to back every single day. I remember taking on the first calls. I was even in the car because we had booked it so tight. I was in the car driving somewhere in Switzerland, and people were buying, and I was on the phone trying to write down, like, what's your name? And, how can you transfer the money to me? Like, they wanted to work with me. They were so eager. I was fully booked for the next 6 months.
Wow. See, that's awesome. But I love how you're strong-headed and you're like, no, I'm going to do it my way. Oops. Okay. We're going to do what you suggested. Don't you love that as a coach now, being that person that gives the advice and be like, oh, okay, let's see how that works for you. Go ahead. Have fun. The lesson will be more valid when you feel the one sale over it all, right? But we all have to go through that stuff. And I don't think that you would be where you were if you didn't go through that first, because then when you probably did the next launch, it was probably a much different thing. So tell me about how you got into the courses then after all the one-on-ones.
So I started to do one-on-one, and then I was always thinking back to that experience of being a CEO, not being able to scale the company as much as I wanted. I never wanted to be in a similar situation myself. So I was like, okay, one-on-one is not so scalable. Yes, you can raise your price and I can work more hours, but I realized having 10 clients at once was enough for me. I also needed to spend time continuing with the weekly webinars and other things like that. So mid 2015, I've been doing one-on-one coaching for about a year. I said, it's time for group coaching. I had done little attempts, one Facebook post and one email, and nobody had signed up. And I'm like, okay, I know this is not the way to launch. You actually need to create more buzz, do some seeding, and then make your offer, and not just, do one post and hope for the best. So I was on holiday in July. We're driving along the south coast of Iceland, and I just I have to get this group program out there. So in the evening, I'm writing to my assistant, which I had hired luckily before, and we just scrambled together a simple sales page, and I email it out, and I sell a group coaching program within a few days without a webinar or anything, just with seeding and talking about it. What's the name of the program? Is anybody launching in the next 3 to 6 months? Talking about things like that. And then I had my first group coaching program, made 18,000. Yeah, it was $1,500 times 12 people. And I really felt I was onto something. People didn't want to start until 1st of September, though. So I could sell in July, but in Europe, people don't like to do courses in the middle of the summer. But I thought, I'm onto something. So I went straight ahead and sold a 4-week program in August. I sold another group program for October, November, December. And I was just on this track to sell group programs. And then we come to 2016, and I have my first $74,000 launch from group programs alone.
That's awesome. How did you start scaling that then too? So it was a 4-week program. And how big was your list when you actually launched that? I love knowing the actual numbers, if you remember back then. And then how did you get to the 74? Because you teach people launching. So you probably got really good at it also as you were going through.
Yeah, I think my list was probably at 3,000. So I was doing more like bi-weekly webinars, not advertising all of them. I was getting a little bit tired of the Facebook ads. And then I picked back up when I was doing proper launches after that. But basically, I was thinking scale. So my first groups were 6 people, and I had 2 times 6 people, but I had them together in one Facebook group to save a bit of time. And that was great. And then in 2016, I was thinking, how do I scale this? And I started to work with another business coach. And all her groups were 6 people. So I was like, I thought that's what you do when you run group programs. They have to be 6 people. And then I wanted to challenge that. I was like, why? Why can they not be bigger? And I didn't see any examples. Now I see them all over the place. But back then I just didn't see them. And I thought to myself, I can do more. So I decided to be bold and say, it's 18 people in the group. And I was always thinking that everyone needs time on the hot seat. I was in that mode, which I know now that's not the thing. People often don't even like to raise their hands. They just like to listen to others. So that was all still, that was my own limiting beliefs in terms of what a group program needs to look like. But with 18 people, I figured, okay, I can have them go on the hot seat once a month instead of twice a month and things like that. And so in August 2016, I launched my first 18 people group program. And that became probably one of my favorite groups. What happened was they stayed with me for 3 years. They renewed, not the whole group. I think the final group was 10 people. Always a few people dropped off, but they made me an offer every year how they can continue. So 2016, 17, and 18, it was the same group that continued. And they always came when it was running to the end. They came to an offer with me. Sigrun, we want to continue with you, but you only have to do 1 call a month with us. And this is what we're going to pay you.
Wow, that's awesome. So was it a year-long program or was it 6 months? What was the group of 18?
So yeah, I started to scale in that sense. So there's 2 ways you can actually scale group programs like I was doing it. I made the groups bigger and I made them longer.
So you have less sales cycles too. You're like, oh, now they're going to go. So do you do 6 months or 12 months?
I started, the smallest group I ever run was 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. Then I've done 2 months, I've done 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 10 months. And then I ended up with all of them being 12 months. But this took a little bit of time. I think it was 2017 when all of them became 12 months long.
Wow. Well, and you probably built up all of the content and everything else in the back end too, to be able to have 12 months. Not that they don't have just you too, but I'm sure you have a huge repertoire of a ton of content that you've recorded from over these years, right? Do you keep that all on a membership site? Do they get access to that? Or is it just like a hot seat kind of thing?
It was mainly mastermind, so hot seat type of things. But I had been doing the weekly webinars and that was basically my membership. So every time they had a question, how to do a webinar, how to do this, I'm like, it's in the membership. So I had all the content, but of course, because they are weekly webinars, they were not structured like a course or a program. They were more like resources.
Yeah. So you could just go, you need that, go over there. You need that, go over there. But you must have a team, especially now. So fast forward to now, you're running a lot. So you've got a lot going on. So what does your team look like to be able to support, especially with I'm assuming you have tons of clients all at once.
Yeah. So the group programs, I first must share this part. So my launch was 74,000, and then we come to September 2016. I've just launched this 18 people group program, and my husband loses his job. And he had been working for the tech industry, Fujitsu Siemens, Hewlett Packard, and Cisco Systems, and just had passed 10 years of service for Cisco Systems. And there's another restructuring, and he loses his job. But even before, he started to joke around like, hey, I can just work for you. Or, you're doing so well, I don't need to, work on. And I didn't like those comments. I was like, no. But something happened in me when he lost his job. Of course, he got a, what do you call, package, he got a package deal where he's get paid for 6 or 9 months. But still, I thought to myself, he doesn't need to go back. So in 2016, I made 340,000. So I was like, I went from 74,000 in 2014, 164 in 2015, 340 in 2016. But because he lost his job, something clicked with me, and I made my biggest group launch, 230,000.
That's big.
That was over 2 months. Because it's masterminds and you need to do discovery calls and all of that. So it's not like in 1 week. But it was as a result, after him losing his job, that I kind of like, I did even one group more than I was planning to do and something like that. Now, the thing that happened next was in January 2017, I started to work with a new coach. And I come all excited into the first coaching call and getting to know the new group. And it's a little bit like a new school and you're all excited. And then he asks us to share, what is your biggest win since, you started this program? And I'm like, I had a $230,000 launch. And people are like, yeah. Everybody's super happy. People only had to be at 6 figures to be in the group. So this was pretty huge. And then he asked me back, so what are you selling now? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have anything else. So you don't have anything scalable to sell? And then I'm like, no.
Like, did you just see what I did? I did a good job. Wait, get pat on the head first.
Yeah,
all right.
No. But it was exactly what I needed to hear.
Totally.
Sometimes I don't like coaching like that, but it was what I needed in that moment, because I was not, I had always this idea when you have an online business that you have a signature online course. And since the first one didn't work out, the one where I failed in my first year, and I'm so glad today because I don't want to be known for that. I just had focused on one-on-one and groups and doing it very successfully. But suddenly I was there, 3 years in business, starting my 4th year, and I did not have my signature program. And I had been jealous of all the other people that had their signature online programs, and I didn't. And again, something clicked within me. I used to do webinars to tell people how my launches went. Even today, people will message me, Sigrun, how did your launch go? Are you not doing a Facebook Live? Are you doing a podcast? Are you doing a webinar? And I'm like, I'm not sharing them so much as I used to. I share them with my clients, but not so publicly before. But anyway, I have already scheduled a webinar when I get this comment. And I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity to announce something. I don't know what it is. On the morning of the webinar, I still don't know what I am selling, but I've decided to sell something. And I had tried many times to think about what were my webinars about. Like, I had done over 100 webinars on all the topics in online business. Every webinar was different. There was no
different.
Yeah,
no, I was going to ask you about that. That's insanity. Wow.
No repetition. And I was like, there is a course in here. I just don't know what it is. And I had even hired a person that was supposed to be an expert in stuff like this. And she said, this is at least a 12-month program. I'm like, yeah, I think so too. And of course, I just wanted to use the content. I didn't want to, I wanted to redo it, but use the experience from creating this content. Like, how could I create a path? Because people needed a path. I had tried to do a membership with the webinars, and that was not satisfactory because they are not connected with each other. And as I sit there on the morning of the webinar, I'm like, Sigrun's Online MBA. I just made it up on the day. I contact my assistant. I said, let's create a sales page. And she had like 2-3 hours because she is 6 hours behind me. So she had like 2-3 hours to create the sales page. And it's like hot seat calls, you have access to 100 webinars. And, I had no content created, but it was just a concept because I had done an MBA myself. I did not learn anything about online business
Right.
or very little about entrepreneurship. And I just said, this is going to be different. And I sold 50 spots for $1,000.
So did that include, so it had hot seats though. So did it include you or did it not? Was it like a monthly thing? Like how long was it? Tell me more.
So I called this inaugural class, and I told them this would be a $2,000 program, 12 months, not 6 or 8 weeks like most online programs. And they would get weekly office hour with me and a monthly hot seat call with me. So I was basically selling them because the masterminds were sold out. So I was trying to replicate something of the mastermind in a scalable program. So the promise wasn't that everyone gets on the hot seat. I said, you have to apply. Here's the type form. You have to apply. I can take 12 people on each call. And there's no guarantee you can come on more than once. And I've never had an issue. Even now, when I have over 500 people in the program, active in the program right now, it's never an issue. People just don't necessarily want to come on a hot seat in front of hundreds of people. So it's not a problem at all. So yes, still today we have the similar format. There's a weekly Q&A. It's asynchronous. So there's a post that goes up. They post their questions. I go on Facebook Live, reply to the questions. And then there's a monthly hot seat call. And then we have most master classes. And now I've in the first 2 years, I took my time and created 12 core modules of everything around online business. And I put a lot of business into it. Of course, people want to typically learn how to sell more, how to do marketing, but I force them to do planning and budgeting and think about profit and loss and team building and all that other stuff, which I think is essential when you're building a business.
Yes. The spoonful of sugar is the sales part, and then the medicine underneath is all the planning and the actual stuff that really builds a business. But sometimes it's fun. Well, tell me, so how much? It's a year program, but it's only $2,000 for your signature one, or what is the total cost for it?
So it was first 1,000 for the inaugural class, then I raised 1,500, then 2,000, and then I started to compare it to other programs. And I was like, okay, I raised it to 3,000. Yeah, so it's $3,000 now. It's still very affordable for what you get.
Yeah, that really is. Because I've been in the online space for a long time too. Everyone's like, a signature program is $2,000 and it's 8 to 12 weeks and you just pack them all in there and then we do launches and that's sort of how it goes. Do you still do a lot of one-on-one stuff? And our launches, do they burn you out? I feel like I've got quite a few clients that are like, launch, nothing, launch, right? And it starts to get a little bit crazy too. So do you have any advice on some of that stuff?
I stopped doing one-on-one 2017. So today, it's the signature program, Samba. I have a group coaching program for 10K and then a mastermind on top. I also had retreats. I sold the last one out in last March. I'm running it end of August this year. I don't have the bandwidth to run a retreat anymore. And revenue-wise or profit-wise, you can imagine retreats are not the best thing to do. And then I'm planning a conference, which I will come to in a minute.
See, I love entrepreneurs. They're like, and then I'm going to do this, and then we're going to try this, and I don't know what to sell in the webinar, but this is great. Let's try this out. So yes,
some things you have to plan a little bit more out, for like a conference year in advance. But yeah, I love actually launches, and I think maybe one of the reasons is I think it's in the DNA, where you come from and where you've been raised. So I'm Icelandic, and in Iceland, the people before me, the generations, were fishermen and farmers, and mostly fishermen. And when there's fish in the sea, you go and catch it. When there's no fish, you don't. And when there's fish in the sea, you get some money, some income, and you go and buy a car or a TV or whatever. But when there's no fish, you just don't. And that's why when the bank crisis was here, 3 or 4 banks even were let go bankrupt. The government did not save them here in Iceland. And we sent them to prison, the people that are a fault of it. Most countries didn't. And it was not a problem. We just like, okay, these are going to be the year. For 1 or 2 years, we're just not going to be spending money. So launches feel like I'm going fishing. I love it. I'm just going to sea and I'm, getting all the fishes. And then I come back and, and I love this downtime also between where I can do podcast interviews and learn something new or hire a team. I spend a lot of the summer, doubling my team and things like that. So yeah, actually I love launches and people are like, whoa, why don't you evergreen? I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I know, from the technical skill, from the strategy, I know how to do that. It's just, it hasn't been an urgency for me.
Right? If you like it, there's no need to change. That's the other piece, though. I feel like everybody's like, oh, well, you'll do this. Well, if you like it, keep doing it. I don't know why people change things if they really, really like it. I think that's awesome. But I know we have to start wrapping up in just a second. What are some of the, before I get to my last question, what are some of the trends, though? Because we talked about like webinars and Facebook ads and all that sort of stuff, right? And everybody's like, well, webinars aren't working as much anymore. Facebook ads are really expensive. Like everybody sort of has the thing. So what are you seeing is trending, especially on the launch side, because this is something that you teach?
I would say what was really, and this is maybe not so new, but I'm just seeing the effectiveness is using Messenger. I'm seeing
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Facebook ads are tricky. I used to do Facebook ads myself. For the last 2 years, I've had a Facebook ad manager, but I'm upgrading. Like I am now considering Facebook ad managers that are pretty expensive. I'm getting the offers and I'm like, seriously? I should have been a Facebook ad manager. I would be a gazillionaire.
Yes. I have a few clients in that space. It's a very interesting space right now, for sure.
Yeah, they're becoming more tricky. And for bigger launches, for $1 million launches, you need the professional team or agency to take care of it. And webinars are definitely not as effective as 2014. I still love them. So that's still the way to launch for me. But I use Facebook Lives or pre-recorded videos in between to warm up and use them very selectively. And I always stream them. You cannot just hope for people to come on Zoom anymore. The attendance rate has gone dramatically down in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But ManyChat, you can use it in many good ways. So some of the tricks that I've used, or tactics, is I make sure that I stream, for instance, into a group versus on the page to make sure people in the group, everything is proven around. People that are in the group are much more likely to buy. And
so then there are a whole group that we need to join. So what is the name? Is it a free group that everyone can join? So it's for, what's it called?
Profitable Online Business with Sigrun.
Great.
Yeah. And then then I have worksheets, and I often construct it in a way that the worksheets are only available through ManyChat.
That's smart. Yeah. Well, wait, I want the thing. Oh, wait, I have to connect. Okay. That makes sense.
And nobody has ever said anything about it. They do it. They can unsubscribe if they want to. And I ask for an email address, and that makes it connect back to Infusionsoft for me. Because you can only do from the ManyChat side. So yeah, I'm geek out on stuff like that. And once I've geeked out on it, I'll delegate it to someone else. But I love trying out new tools. I have to be careful because you can get sucked into it. And so I do wait a little bit more now because all these shiny objects and new tools, I used to, install them all and try them all out a few years ago. And people are like, yeah, Sigrun always knows about the latest tools. And I'm like, no, this is not very profitable. So I wait a little bit, and I suggest most people should, unless this is really what you're selling.
I'm a geek. I'm a super geek. And I just remember Periscope and all those other things where it was like, oh, let's jump on this bandwagon. Oh, wait, now it's dead. Okay, there goes all that time that I spent, right? Not that I was on it that much, but I'm right there with you. I created a bot a long time ago and was like, okay, not yet. So we actually just did a webinar last week about bots. But to know, especially on the email open rates and the webinars, like people are hearing that stuff, but they're not, to me, hearing a lot of the other good things that are coming out that are actually working. And so I really appreciate that info and you sharing it with everybody. So have you built your group up from the beginning, or was it recent? Like, how did you know that the group thing really worked well?
I actually opened the group in 2014, but I never kind of, let's say, it didn't go viral, or I wasn't trying to kind of get so many. I remember I was in a Facebook group, a big Facebook group, and people used the opportunity to advertise their groups. And it just felt icky to me. Yeah. So I didn't. So yeah, my group is about, it's more than 10,000 members, but it's still like I've made several $1 million. So it's not always about size.
Yeah.
And honestly, I will probably create a new group very soon, because what happens is if you have a group over several years, there's a lot of dead, not necessarily bodies. I don't want to. Like we talked about blood before, but there's a lot of like, yeah, it's a digital dust in there that it's not helpful for the engagement. And I believe pop-up groups can be very helpful for launches versus using the same group again and again. I've done both, and both things can work. But yeah, if people are really interested, they will join a pop-up group.
That's awesome. Do you have a lot of moderation though that has to go to create an actual engage, or do you have any resources that you can tell us about creating an actual engaged community and group? Because otherwise it's like dust bunnies like flying through and a bunch of spammers unless they actually are active and engaging your group.
So what happened, I would say exactly a year ago, is that I just got very tired and I archived my group. And it's not archived right now as we're talking about it, but I just felt this exhaustion.
It's a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah, my team was just too small. It was pretty much me, my assistant, and my husband part-time. And I felt I was like, nothing happened unless I said, let's do this, let's do that. And I just felt suddenly this tiredness. I didn't think I had a burnout. I probably just caught myself before that happened. And I took a step back. I archived my free Facebook group. I focused fully on my clients. I merged two masterminds that I was planning to run two masterminds on two levels. I merged them together. I made some hard decisions just before Christmas last year, but in a good way. Yeah, maybe it hurt me business. Maybe I lost less, $500,000 less revenue. But I just thought, for my health, that's, you're gonna spend anything.
Yeah.
And then I took time to kind of figure out what kind of team I really wanted. And I started to look for people in February, and I took a long time to hire. I gave them assignments and all these tests. And and it's turned out really well, even though I had to let one person go this morning. Overall, that process was fantastic. I have an amazing executive assistant who just like, I cannot believe that I didn't have one before. It's been life-changing. And so I've really taken the time to kind of grow my team. And like you said, you have to go back when your business has grown fast and you kind of just are running with it. And suddenly you realize one day, wow, I'm running really low on battery. I need to take a step back and make sure I get more help. And that's where I was. So that explains why my group is maybe not as active as could be, but it doesn't really hurt my sales. I just spike it up in launches.
See, I love you being honest about that stuff too, and the fact that you were able to understand before the pain, before the burnout side, to go, oh wait, no, there's some inklings of this isn't really good. Because I feel like business owners have to have that recalibration, and we don't want to admit it. We're like, no, everything's perfectly straight line all the way up every time, right? And it's not like, you have clients, it's not like that at all. A lot of times it can be like, oh wait, don't like that part. Oh wait, let's go over here, right? So we're always trying to recalibrate and figure it out. So I really appreciate you being honest to be able to talk about it, because most people don't. They're like, everything is sunshine and roses. I'll talk about it later, but yeah. So I really appreciate that. I know we have to start wrapping up because I told you we might potentially go long. I'd ask you a million questions. So the last question is, what's one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
One action. What would 10x your business? The action that would 10x your business. And it's not the same action for everyone. So I just want you to, those who are listening or watching, think about that. What is the one action you could do that would 10x your business? And there is.
I love it. And there is, just so you know. So keep brainstorming, because there definitely is. I love that. Where do we find more about you? I know we can follow your group and all that fun stuff, but tell us where you are online.
So I have a podcast as well, The Sigrun Show, and Sigrun.com. You find my website. And last but not least, I would say sign up for a wait list for the Self-Made Summit, which is my conference. That's a conference coming up in June 2020 in Iceland. So I'm bringing in speakers from Europe and America, and my guests will be women from all over the world, and they're already booking their travel. And because I'm on a mission to accelerate gender equality, Iceland is number one in gender equality in the world.
Really? Wow.
It doesn't mean that we're super good, but it means that everyone else is worse. But my goal is to bring together women, like-minded women who really want to change the world by starting or scaling their business. And I want us to think bigger. I want more women to be millionaires.
And then they can come on my show. Awesome. Where do they find out more about your conference? Can they go? Is it Sigrun.com where they'll find all that information?
Sigrun.com/self-made summit.
Ooh, nice. I love the name of it too. Not self-made man, self-made women. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody check out her podcast. I so appreciate you, Sigrun. Thank you so much and have an amazing day.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoy this show, I would really appreciate your wonderful words of feedback. Go leave me a review. I would love a rating, whatever you can do in the time that you've got. I would so appreciate it.